Toledo's the front line between Ohio State and Michigan in their annual war. It's also the front line between Notre Dame and Ohio State as they meet for the national championship on Monday night, joined now by Dave Briggs from the Toledo Blade. And Dave, it's very fascinating because we know there's a ton of Notre Dame fans in Toledo, a ton of Ohio State fans. Everybody's kind of got a rooting interest on Monday.
Absolutely. I mean, short of Ohio State, Michigan, this is the dream title matchup for Northwest Ohio. And yeah, I mean, Ohio State's obviously the dominant team in our market, and Michigan's number 2. I mean, the MAC teams are in their own category, but Notre Dame's a clear 3. And there's a lot of Notre Dame fans. I mean, just look at, obviously, big Catholic population. Central Catholic is Fighting Irish. St. John's Jesuit, blue and gold. It just kind of permeates every walk of life here. And, two teams with huge fan bases in Northwest Ohio coming down to the south. Doesn't get any better than that.
And there's some very conflicted Michigan fans. You had a chance to catch up with some of those guys earlier this week.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if it's one of those things you say, but actually when the game comes around, maybe the emotions are a little different. But as many as not, Michigan fans are saying they would be fine with Ohio State winning this year. Obviously, it's the lesser of two evils. Notre Dame is a bitter rival as well, lesser than Ohio State and an off and on rival. But I think there's more of a sense of security with Michigan fans. They have the upper hand in the rivalry. They won the national title last year. I think there's a bit of a troll factor with you won the national title, but you still couldn't beat Michigan. So I don't know. I think when push comes to shove, they probably will not be able to stomach the thought of Ohio State fans having so much joy on Monday night. But it is a fascinating rivalry barstool debate in our parts.
Well, and for years when Ohio State had the upper hand, there was this thought exercise that would you take a loss to Michigan if you still won the national championship? And for the vast majority of college football history, those two things were mutually exclusive.
Right.
But now because of the 12-team playoff, you can lose to your rival and still win a national title.
For sure, and you've heard some of the national people kind of ask Day, and or more of just chatting around the media areas. Would Ohio State fans absolve Ryan Day of the losses to Michigan if they win the national title? And the answer is, of course. I know the apocalyptic anger after the Michigan game is one thing, and you say things in the moment, but when you actually see a national title and you see this kind of magical run through the playoffs, if Ohio State is able to finish the job and they're able to hang that 9th national championship year on the facade of Ohio Stadium, I mean, this will be remembered as a team for the ages and a pretty cool storybook. Now, at some point, you're going to have to start beating Michigan. I think the crazy thought exercises that we were kind of just joking about, could Ryan Day lose 12 straight Michigan games if he won the national title every 3.5 years? That would be a good question, but for now, absolutely. It's a new era, and if you're able to win the national title in a 12-team playoff, all is forgiven.
Day has said repeatedly there are great stories to be told on this Ohio State team, but they're only told if they win on Monday. Among those great stories, Findlay's Luke Montgomery, as he has now started the last game, the Cotton Bowl win over Texas. He has found his role on the offensive line at guard and also as one of the leaders of this team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know he would have in his mind he wanted to come around faster, which is kind of crazy to say. I mean, he's only his second season playing for one of the top programs in the country, and it just says all about his talent that he was expected to compete for a starting job out of fall camp, but just kept coming along all year and got his opportunity to rotate in the Tennessee game, lit it up, was awesome, rotated in again in Oregon, was great, and then gets his chance, starts at left guard, great again in the Texas game, and we're expecting him to start again on Monday night. So, yeah, he has absolutely been a huge spark for the Ohio State offensive line. Their interior depth was a huge issue, and he really has been a season saver in a way.
In 2006, when Urban Meyer won his first national championship at Florida, beating Ohio State, Earl Bruce admitted he was a little conflicted because Urban was one of Earl's great mentees, and of course he was going up against Ohio State. Similar situation playing out this season with Jim Tressel's Marcus Freeman leading Notre Dame, and Marcus Freeman has maybe done the impossible and made the Fighting Irish likable?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's hard not to like Marcus Freeman, great guy. I think Ohio State fans you sense they're a little conflicted because Marcus Freeman said some things after getting the Notre Dame job, basically saying he wishes he had gone to Notre Dame instead of Ohio State, because why would you want to be playing for national titles when you could have played for Charlie Weiss. But that's neither here nor there. He's very likable, and yeah, you're right. I mean, it's I don't think I certainly haven't talked to any Ohio State fans who are conflicted, and I'm sure not even Jim Tressel is conflicted when it comes down to it. But yeah, absolutely, has become one of the more fascinating narratives. I mean, can you imagine Duke basketball or the Yankees or Notre Dame football being likable? Well, here it is.
You listen to Marcus Freeman, and it's like you're transported back in time, and you're listening to many of the same phrases that Jim Tressel said. In reality, is something that both said quite a bit. And in reality, this is a fundamentally sound Notre Dame team that, similar to the 2002 Ohio State team, they have found ways to win games that perhaps they shouldn't have won, but they've got a lot of confidence in themselves going into this game.
Absolutely. I mean, it's... Yeah, I mean, everybody's talking about Ohio State as kind of this team on paper. Not even God can sink this ship. But, yeah, Notre Dame is a lot of confidence, big-time defense, second only to Ohio State in points allowed nationally. They live on creating the turnover, plus 15 margin. In the end, it's hard to see Notre Dame, especially with their battered offensive line, being able to move the ball against Ohio State's defense. And on the flip side, it's not hard to imagine Ohio State hitting its share of big plays against Notre Dame's man coverage. So I just see more paths for Ohio State to win, but absolutely, this is more of a challenge than I think people think.
You mentioned man coverage for Notre Dame. Texas took Jeremiah Smith out of the game last week by using his zones, sometimes bracketing Jeremiah Smith, three guys defending him. Notre Dame plays man-to-man. Marcus Freeman said, though, you got to play a couple of different ways if you want to try and slow down this Ohio State offense.
Yeah, I'll be fascinated. I mean, Notre Dame's a very straight man-to-man team, and are you really going to go against what you've done all year and done so well for one game? I don't know if that would be the best strategy. They probably do have to mix it up a little bit if you go straight man. Jeremiah Smith, he's certainly not short of confidence. He promised yesterday he's going to put on a show, and if you go man-to-man, he probably will. So they will mix it up a little bit, but I do think this is a better matchup for Ohio State than the teams that are practiced in the zone.
Finally, we have to touch on the fact that this is the first 12-team playoff. This is a very different college football landscape, and part of that is reflected at the two quarterbacks. Riley Leonard was at Duke last year. Will Howard, of course, at Kansas State, both highly regarded transfers who have come in, and maybe you want to call them a hired gun, but they've got their teams playing for a national title.
Sure. No, absolutely. It's interesting. Ryan Day and Marcus Freeman at the press conference were talking today that, yeah, it's
we want to major in recruiting and minor in the transfer portal.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have. Everybody's talking about Ohio State brought in all these transfers, and I believe they brought in 9. I think Notre Dame brought in 8 this year. Seven, and yeah. So these are still teams that are developed from within. I saw some Notre Dame fan sites that Ohio State's team is bought, Notre Dame's is built. That's really not the narrative that is true in reality. But yeah, I mean, where would these teams be without Riley Leonard or Will Howard? Yeah, both great additions and both certainly reflective of this new era.
Ohio State has won the last 6 meetings between the Buckeyes and Notre Dame, and outside of last year's game in South Bend, none of those games have been close, as Ohio State has controlled the rivalry ever since it was renewed in the mid-'90s. I want to thank Dave Briggs from the Toledo Blade for joining us. Of course, he'll have full coverage on the Ohio State-Notre Dame game on the Blade in the online editions. Thank you for joining us, Dave, as we continue on the road with the Buckeyes in Atlanta.